For some people, it's more important to make a lot of money. For other people, it's more important to change the world. For other people, so everybody needs to find what's important for them when they do a business.
Hi guys, welcome to Taxonomy Podcast, Tech Me There. In today's episode, we are joined by a remarkable guest, Christoph, who is the Managing Director of Gravio. He's been a seasoned entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, as well as co-author of a blockchain book. Today, we are dividing the mind of someone who understands the intricate dance between entrepreneurship, technology, and the ever-evolving business landscape. Without further ado, let's welcome Christoph.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan, for having me here on the podcast today. I'm very excited to share maybe some aspects of my story, and hopefully I can, inspire some people and get some ideas as well. My name is Christoph. I'm originally born in Switzerland, and born and raised in Switzerland. But then I spent a long time also in London, in UK. I went then to Hong Kong, and now I'm based in Singapore. So I've traveled a little bit, and actually, I'm actually half Asian as well. So my mom's from the Philippines as well. So I think that's also a little bit where I have my entrepreneurial side from, because my mom's family also used to have a business, or still have a business in the Philippines. So that's a little bit about me. I'm very fascinated by technology. My thing, if people ask me, what's your thing? So my thing is actually building platforms. I'm very excited about building software platforms, because I think like a software platform is almost like a helper of humans, or of a group of humans, and can enable them in many different ways. And being able to interconnect in many different ways is something that's new to the way that people and humans interact with each other. So this makes it very exciting for me to be in that space.
All right, thank you so much, Christoph. I think for the sake of the audience, would you like to share a bit more about your role and responsibility right now with Gravio, and what are some of the secret products that you guys have been working on?
Yeah, of course. So I'm currently based in Singapore, as I mentioned, and I'm running here the Singapore office of Asteria Corporation, which is a Japanese company. We are listed on the Prime Stock Exchange in Japan, in Tokyo. And all we do in Asteria is building connectivity platforms. We help companies connect inputs and outputs, connect, being more efficient as with the team, document sharing. So all the products, we have a few products, are all geared towards improving the way that things are interconnected, and inputs and outputs within an organization are interconnected. And my role here in Singapore is rolling out Gravio in the Southeast Asian area. Gravio is a platform that has multiple connectors. It's a very modular platform that has a lot of kind of building blocks that you can just take, and then you can just string them together to build your own applications without any coding knowledge even. And our goal with this platform is to help commoditize certain software aspects, and make it easier for people to focus on their business ideas, their business models, and then just don't have to reinvent the wheel, because we have all prefabricated blocks that you can just string together to build your system. With Gravio, we think that a lot of the future things that will happen in software is happening in the physical space. Not only software to software, but how can we connect the power of software to what's happening in the real space? And for that, for example, you need a lot of sensors, or you have like actuators that interact with the physical space, or you have camera systems, for example, that kind of record what's in the physical space, use a layer of AI to detect what's happening there, and then kind of bridge it into the software space, so you can do all the all the things that software can do. So this is also what we are aiming to do, helping companies to leverage these new ways of interacting between software and physical space.
I see. So that's really something, right? Technology that empowers the smart city solutions as a whole. I think just beyond just platform and the communications. I think something that's more fascinating about your entrepreneurship journey, right, from how you successfully exit, right, from your previous company, right, to how you actually transit your role into managing director in Gravio, managing the business and performance. So I think this is something that is really interesting, because it's not a very usual context that happens to everyone. Of course, most of us would wish to have a successful exit from our business, right? Even myself. So I think could you probably share a bit more about what happened back then and what inspired you to even kickstart your business? I think probably you are a seasoned entrepreneur. So what were you thinking? What were some of the top thinking process?
Yes. Okay. So maybe to start with, my original intention was not always to exit or to do this. I kind of went with the flow essentially. But what kind of drove me is always the fascination for new technologies and what those new technologies enabled people to do. So when I actually first got in touch with new technologies was in the late 1990s, so a long time ago when the internet was a new thing, right? There wasn't even the World Wide Web back then. Well, there was the World Wide Web, but it was kind of a side thing because back in the days we had something called CompuServe, which was kind of a network of terminals that were connected, and you can exchange data and connect with people through this network. And I was really fascinated by that because you suddenly can just go beyond your screen, right? So you just had the screen of your computer, and that was kind of where it was happening. But suddenly you can actually, randomly, connect to other people or, learn new stuff. And what I then discovered very early on is HTML technology, right? So I found and I researched myself. Oh, I can actually create an HTML file and I can see it in a browser. And then I started to kind of push the limits back then. And I remember, and I was still kind of at what was it called? Just below college, like we call it in German. In German, in Switzerland, we call it Gymnasium, where I was hanging out with my friends, and we were actually experimenting with these new technologies. And soon after that, even before university, I started a company, joined actually a group of guys that already had a company, but I was more on the visual side, and they were more on the technical side, because I always was fascinated by the possibilities of how to interact in the user interface with the people. So the five of us basically set up a company that was in the early 2000s. We started to build content management system because that was a new thing that was kind of even before WordPress, or maybe around the time when WordPress came out. But we kind of built our own content management system, and we started to selling this to Swiss companies, companies around Switzerland. And my first encounter with actually having a proper company back in the beginning, I was just doing like websites, even for other people and for some businesses. It was a good learning experience for me. So this is how I got into it, and I think one of the important things that happened to me when I was doing this is I started to realize that you can actually there's certain moments in time sometimes where you are at the crossroads, or where you can see, there's a new technology and it actually has the potential to change everything completely how it used to be. And whenever this happened, so this happened a few times over since then, of course, and in fact now we are at a very big crossroad, maybe the biggest one that I've encountered since the World Wide Web is artificial intelligence. And the idea is always I see this new technology and I go like, oh, how far can I push it? What can I do with it? What's the limits? What's the technical limits? What's the potential? How can I basically dig into it and find out what can be done with it? So I was always driven by that. And at some point you start to realize you can create value for other people, right? And then this is when the moment comes where you see like, okay, maybe it's a good idea to actually start your own business, because you can create value as an employee, of course, for people, and that's a very comfortable life. But then at some point you go like, actually, what if I create value within my own company, or with me and some partners' company, and then build something up? Then you have multiple ways of creating value, and then you can capture more of that value initially. And it's just a side effect. If you're doing good stuff, people will keep coming to you. If you have a good product, people will keep using the product and even recommending that product. So you will capture more of the value. And then as I mentioned, I just go with the flow, for example. And then of course there's ups and downs. There's more difficult times. There's more easy times. You need to be on your toes and find out how you can address all of these challenges. So I always say being an entrepreneur is making decisions all the time. So make decision after the decision after the decision, and some might be right, some might be wrong, and then you need to basically be in a situation that you can rectify it, and that the big trajectory at least is going into the direction that you aim for, right? and then if somebody comes, for example, and says like, oh, we can see how, you know, your company could fit our company's strategy, or what you've built can fit our company's strategy, that's then when, you know, somebody might knock at your door and say like, oh, we would like to, you know, make you part of our group, and that's when then, you know, you can find the win-win situation where you know, they win because you're part of it, and you win because, you know, maybe make some money, but maybe also your whatever you build suddenly becomes much more valuable because it's in a new context as well, right? So there's multiple ways of finding the win-win situations, and I think that's often the driver of the decisions. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it's being an entrepreneur is never easy, right? I mentioned there's always decision after decisions. I mean, even from my own experience, I realized that you have to decide, right, at that juncture, and at least try it. If it doesn't work, then move on, make a new decisions. Right? It's basically a repetitive process, right? Day after
Yes.
day, you know, months after months, and then even after each engagement with every partners, your clients, or sometimes your advisor, right, which is like mentor. And then you
Yeah.
basically picked up new information. Then you see, whoa, actually this could be done this way. That's how you can actually move on, right, with your own business and then try pivot, right, if you have to. Definitely being an
Yes.
entrepreneur is not easy. So I think from your journey, you know, what are some of the key lessons that, you know, you have learned? And
Yes.
how have these essentially, and at the end of the day, helped to shape up you as a person, as an entrepreneur, right, as a leader?
Okay, yeah. So I think what I've learned can be split into two aspects. One is the stuff that I learned myself through my own journey, and the
Mm,
other things that I learned also is by looking what others have been doing. For example, because I've also been a mentor at the University College London, for example, for startups and things like that, and I've been studying a lot of case studies, of course, how others have been doing it. And I think one of the important things to remember, of course, is, you know, the success chances are actually very low as a new company, because because of course in the beginning you make a lot of mistakes, but that doesn't mean you can have multiple attempts, and then, you know, obviously in every attempt you become better, because I always say sometimes you win and sometimes you
mm,
learn, right?
yeah.
So you need to always, you know, embrace a failure and learn from them, so that you can, you know, next time do a better job. So one of the things maybe that I learned also over the time, maybe on my own, but also a little bit by observing others, is a lot of people start companies because they have a view only mainly focused from their own point of view, right? And I think like this, there must be a massive problem that we can solve, or this would be a very cool thing to do, or this would be this could be very useful. But there's a huge bias, right? So if you come up with your own idea and you start something and you think like, oh, there's something that will be used, it's very difficult to find customer for an idea, but it's more easier to find ideas for a customer, right? So
Mm,
what that means is you should try not to make a business based on an idea that you think is really cool or very useful, but you should actually try to find a problem and then find a solution for that problem, and then sell that solution to multiple people who have the same problem.
mm,
Because I always say like no pain, no gain. But what I mean by that is if there's no pain point that you solve, there is nobody that will pay
yeah.
for solving that problem, because it's very rare that people spend things on nice to have things or cool to have things, in a sense that unless you have, of course, like massive branding and you can influence people with marketing and advertising, or something like that, then you can potentially get people to do some impulse purchases in the consumer base, for example.
Mm,
Or on the B2B basis is more difficult, because the decision making process, of course, is more complicated. But if you actually solve a real problem and you address that problem, and there is a lot of people who, in fact, everyone, they always want to solve their problems. And one of the ways of solving problems is usually they just, throw money at the problem and then it goes away. You can look at this in many different contexts, whether it's I don't know, even buying luxury goods, which increases,
yeah.
let's say, self-esteem or confidence, or you can get from A to B by buying a car or something like that. So this is finding the problem. It has to be the focus on any startup. And then when you start a business, I think what really makes a difference also is if you start with a client, right? So you already have a client that's already ready to pay, that's already confirmed that what is creating value for them. So because the first client is always the hardest, because you don't have any use cases that you can convince them. Say like, look, these other guys are doing this as well, or look, these other doing this or having this as well, because they're the first, right? So if you start the business with the first client, then you already have something that's very, very valuable, which is a client that you can then go to. Look, these guys are doing it, so maybe you should do too. And there is this bias that some people don't make purchase decision unless they have seen other people doing the same thing before them. So other people have done it. Therefore, for me, it's safe to do it as well. So this is very important in terms of decision making. So I think it's very, very good if you start with already a client in mind, or a client that has already confirmed that they will pay for it. So then, of course, comes the question of intellectual property, right? So if they already pay for it and you basically build something for them, you need to have their agreement that you can actually use whatever you build, maybe for them or for their specific problem, also for others if they pay for it, because obviously you need to clear up and make sure that you don't mess up expectations there, because maybe they get it more tailored towards their specific needs, so that's their gift, so to speak, and in return you can they pay you for building something, but then you might be able to use it in other places as well, but so they get it, or they get a discount, they get it at cheap, the better rate, or they have exclusive right for it in a certain area. So there's many ways how you can negotiate these kind of things. But yeah, it always depends what you want to do. Do you want to do a service business where you actually create a service for people, or do you want to do a product business where you basically have a commoditized product that you can resell multiple times over and over again? These two types of businesses have completely different challenges. The service business tends to be easier because you can actually tailor a solution for someone and you just sell time. But then if you sell time, you have the limitation because time is limited. Whereas if you sell, let's say, a software product or a platform, you can multiply the sales much more easily, and it doesn't have an impact on your time. And you charge for you charge for the right to use it, or for transactions, or for whatever your business model is. And this is not limited by time, for example.
I do see a point in what you mentioned, and most of the client out there, I mean, right now there's this word that is commonly used around, which is called FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Right? When they know someone is actually starting it, and that guy is my competitor, and they already having it, okay, I gotta take a look at it and as soon as possible. I mean, this is of course a good scene, right? A good sign that people are actually interested, because they do see, competitors are seeing values in your propositions, in your solutions, or in your product, or even services. But one key thing that I personally also encounter, I think this would be a very interesting question, right? This, for example, let's say this solution has been validated that is good, right? It brings value, right, when it's being deployed on the premise. But the person that you are speaking to, let's say these key stakeholders, right? Yeah, he understands it's good, but he's just hesitant to adopt or even try it out, because he may sound like very, very high level. Oh, I'm interested, we are definitely looking at this next year, we are looking at having smart city solution. Yours definitely fits one of the pipeline. But at the back of their mind, they could be thinking, no, actually this doesn't, help me achieve my KPI at work. Probably not so important, right? So coming to stakeholders like this or client like this, I mean, how do you cross the hurdle to get them to close the deal?
So yeah, this is a good question. I think it all hinges around understanding their problem, right?
Yeah.
And if you can demonstrate that you understand their problem and that you have the right tools to actually solve their problem, they will buy from you, right? So they will go and say like, oh, I can just spend money and my problem goes away. So then money suddenly becomes not so important anymore, because what's more important is that the problem goes away, right? But a lot of entrepreneurs or even salespeople who are not so experienced, they make the mistake that they think a sales pitch is about the client understanding your product or your service. But it's actually the other way around. A sales pitch is you demonstrating that you understand what problem they're trying to solve, right? And the example that I always make is I did some renovation recently as well in our apartment in the UK. And my wife and I, we made a little brief that we sent out to multiple builders, right? And we had like a selection of 5 builders or construction companies to do renovations. And we asked them to answer the brief, come and walk around our apartment to say like, oh, this is what I can do, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
And you can see they have all different ways of pitching, right? So one said like, oh, I'm really good at, I can make it look everything really expensive, but it actually is not expensive because I know where you get the very cheap door handles that look very expensive. I know where you can get the cheap wood that looks very expensive. I can make it look very expensive. But you don't have to spend a lot of money. So you should choose me because of that. Yeah. And then another guy said like, oh yeah, I know what you want to do. I saw the samples that you said, it won't be cheap, but it will be very good quality, and you'll have some nice finishings, and you'll do it according to this and this and this standard, and you will not have to worry about the quality and everything like that. So and then there's other ones, we can do it quick, and there's other ones I've done this 100 times before, things like that. There's different pitches, different ways, or how they do it. But most of them were talking about themselves and how good they are and things like that. But we ended up choosing the one of which we had the feeling that they understood our vision of what we want to do with this apartment, even though it was not the cheapest. But we did not want to make it to look flash and fancy and save a lot of money. That was a pitch like, oh, we don't want, that's not what we want, right? We want actually good finishing and stuff like that. So the key lesson of this exercise for me, okay, this guy knows exactly what we want. He actually reiterated what we were describing to him or trying to describe to him. And he actually repeated it and said like, oh, I understand you want to do this. You want to do that. You don't want to do this. And then we felt really comfortable with this guy or with this company because we know like, okay, they fully understand what we want to do, what we want to vision. And that's why we chose them, even though they were not the cheapest. So that's similar things should happen in the business world, right?
Yes.
You demonstrate that you understand their problem, and then you can solve it for them, and then the closure of the money is not an issue. The problem can be sometimes very out of the blue. So, for example, I remember one company that was like back in London days. One company had the problem they need to spend the budget, right?
Yeah.
They need to spend the budget because the year ends. So we can help them with that, help them spend the budget. So we basically we built an app for them, which they thought could be useful if we do that. And it was a little bit out of context in a way, but they solved their problem, which is basically spending the money before the year was over, and they got a nice app from it as well, even though their app business wasn't their business, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, you are totally right? It's like rather than getting the use case from them, then try position in a way that you are the specialist in this field, right? And they found the right guy. They found the right
That's
guy
right.
who know what he is delivering, right? Specifically to their need, right, as a client. So it's much more
Correct.
focused in a sense, rather than going in and telling them, my solution can serve every single industry, right?
Mm.
And you are one of them. And they'll be like, so what are you actually serving, right? This is a problem because I encounter it myself. This is why, as a startup founder myself, I have to keep on pivoting, right? Refining the, sales process, right? And essentially, since we are all building products, right? As a software products, of course, then how do we actually get it to be more, product-led growth so that it can actually self-driven by itself, even through websites, right? Through some sort of, digital marketing. These are some of the key trends that I'm seeing right now, but you totally, nail it, I think, which is selling it to what is more relatable to them so they can save trouble, explaining their problem again. But it's more like as a salesperson, you are re-emphasizing on the impact and bringing out the essence of the problems, right, that they are actually facing, and then show the solution right on the table and tell them this is customized just for you. It works, right? Not just for you, it works for many other clients before. And this is what they are saying about it. I think probably this would be a good approach in a way. I mean, I'm still learning throughout my own business journey. I'm still trying to refine things like that. But I believe many of the young entrepreneurs, right, on our podcast are definitely looking to build their business, right? Particularly, I think right now it's all about digitalization, right? Especially next year, everything is about AI, moving towards software products. So I think what are some of the advices that you will actually give to ensure business success for aspiring entrepreneurs that's looking forward to kickstart their business journey?
Yes, yes. Okay, yes. So, just before you mentioned that a lot of entrepreneurs or startups, they look at their competition and they go like, "Oh my God, these guys are ahead," or "These guys are doing
Yeah.
the same thing," and then they kind of panic and think they need to be faster and change the thing, or kind of react to that. I'm not a big fan of this idea, and what I learned in the meantime is, you know, have you
Mm.
heard about the saying, the early bird catches the worm? You have heard
Yeah.
of that? Yeah, yeah, early bird catches the worm. There's a second saying, right? The second saying is the second mouse gets the cheese, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, you know, you when someone is ahead of you, you know, that's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. They will make all the mistakes and you can
Mm.
learn from it. Yeah. Just the important thing is observe very well, see what mistakes they're making, and you do a better version
Yeah.
of it. And there's tons of examples. Like, for example, you know, Apple's iPod wasn't the first MP3 player, right?
Yeah.
YouTube's video platform wasn't the first video platform. There's tons of examples like that. But what they did is they just didn't make the mistakes that the other people have been doing. Apple's iPhone wasn't the first phone, and so you can see a lot of cases where actually the second is just as good
Mm.
as or better even, because it doesn't make the other mistakes as the first one. So don't get entangled into, oh, the competition does this and that. What you need to do as an entrepreneur is you need to come up with a good a product that actually delivers a good user experience. And I think in the past few years, the user experience has become more and more important for any whether it's providing a service or providing a product. The experience that the customer and the users have is so important. And the reason for that is, let's say 20 years ago, yeah,
Mm.
there was not many software around in the world. Yeah, because there were not many people doing software. So people actually were totally okay with the shitty user experience because there was no alternative, right?
Mm.
But now, if you open your phone, you will have like 5 taxi apps on your phone, and assuming they all have the same price, because the price kind of gravitate to the same thing, you will
Mm.
start using the one that has the best user experience, because you always get frustrated with the other one or with this one or with that one. So you will gravitate to whatever has the best user experience. But not only that, if a friend asks you, which taxi app should I use, or can you recommend a taxi app, you will also recommend the one which has the best user experience usually. Unless, of course, there's like referral programs and things like that. But you might actually consider other things.
Yes.
But point is, in the traditional world, you know, you can just buy users almost with advertising, right? You can just say like, I'm the best, I'm this one, you know, make a marketing campaign, advertising campaign. This Nike shoe is the best. This Adidas shoe is the best, whatever. And then
Mm.
people buy because of the advertising. But now consumer have a voice through the internet, right? And you can easily connect. And there's ratings and there's feedback loops and there's a lot of different things. So suddenly the quality of the product becomes much more important than just the marketing of the product
Mm.
in terms of actually selling it. Because you can do a very simple maths, right? You can just say, like, let's say you have an app and you start today, right? You have one user today,
Yeah.
one user, maybe just you. And then you recommend this user tomorrow, this app tomorrow, to 2 more users. Okay. So tomorrow you have 2 users. And then the product is so good. So each of those 2 users recommend it to 2 new users each on the
Mm.
next day. So you have 4 users on the third day. And you do this, and every next day, somebody who uses it recommends it to 2 more users. After 30 days, you know, if you do the calculation, after 30 days, you will have 1 billion users. That's a billion with a B, right? So, of course, it's unrealistic. But I'm just saying this is the power of recommending, of
Yeah.
getting people to recommend your app. You know, they might be just recommended to 1.01 user or to 1.0 to 1.2 users every day, every other day. And there might be overlaps because people might already be using it and things like that. That's why obviously it doesn't explode that much. But what I'm saying is, instead of investing millions in marketing to get the users, which gives you a spike in downloads if you have an app, for example, or a spike in usage if it's a website. Marketing might give you the spike.
Yeah.
Good user experience will give you a constant trajectory. So instead of spending 1 million in marketing, you might as well spend 1 million in user experience. making sure that everyone really enjoys and loves the app and therefore recommends it to their friends, and you will have much more sustainable growth over time. This is one of the recommendations. So there's a big shift from advertising marketing to actually making great user experience, a great product, and then getting people to talk about it. And this is called the Net Promoter Score, right? How likely are people to recommend a product to someone else? And that should be one of the key metrics for success in the future, for sure.
Definitely. I think this is also something that I have realized in terms of rather just fulfilling on the operation functionality. Right now, most of the software products are actually pivoting more towards studying, right, the human behavior, right?
Yes.
How would they actually use it, right? What are some of the key factors that would allow them to be much more sticky with the products, right? Because after being sticky, right, like what you mentioned, then they will start promoting more because they use it more often. Because the impression of the brand, for example, right, when you think about a car hailing app, you think, oh, Grab, or a ride, or Uber, all right. So which one do you use more often? Actually, the words actually does surface, right? The logo, the branding does surface on our brain because we are all human. So I do see that the business of how to really strategize in terms of software product does pivot from just being, operation-centric focus or functionality focus towards more user-centric focus, right?
Yes.
But I think from this topic, definitely, you spend a lot of time growing your business, right? So has that always been this way, you being user-focused, user-centric in terms of the behavior and experience, or was it different? But what actually caused you to realize it or pivot? So what were some of the thinking process that you were going through, or you were building, Gravio, or your other businesses
Yeah.
throughout your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, I think to a large degree throughout my career, it was all about embracing new technologies and actually seeing how far they can be pushed. So when I started or originally, we built content management systems, which was back in the days a rather rare thing for websites, like in the late 1990s, or at least in Switzerland, where we were operating, my friends and myself. Then I went into mobile technology. So, SMS, even that was before mobile phones could do internet and content and things like that. At some point, that was already with my own company. We started, the iPhone came out in I think 2006 or 2007. And then shortly after, the App Store came out. So we started to embrace that, and, getting my team excited about building apps was very key, because then we can start creating apps and be some of the early ones that make apps for some of the big brands around the world from our London office. And then when there's some other technologies that sometimes just come and become a hype and then disappear again, or become a little bit less relevant. So we did a few things with, for example, blockchain as well, which was exciting. We took part in a few hackathons, like our team and we took part in a few hackathons. We built like an insurance system based on smart contracts, which is completely automated. It's all smart contract driven and triggered by sensors and by various different things. It's an exciting thing, but of course, sometimes you can also be too early, right? You can be too early with the technology, and people do not necessarily understand yet what's the value proposition, or it's a little bit just a hype, and then it kind of goes down at Gartner hype cycle and it picks up again. So most of the decisions and most of the drivers that I had is seeing how far can these technologies be pushed. But for that, you need customers who are willing to embrace those technologies as well, right? And who are confident that, because some companies actually, they embrace technologies for their newsworthiness also, right? Because somebody inside, let's say, the big corporation wants to show, look, with this new technology we can do this and that. So they are a bit more experimental with that, and then you can work with them and their innovation department sometimes to come up with these new things where they have a little bit less restrictions around let's say the rules and everything that you need, because it's more like in the innovation department. So that's when you have a service. And if you have a product, I think the user experience is a very important factor for people to actually embrace the product and iterated. And in terms of up and downs, where to pivot, sometimes you bet on the wrong horse. Yeah, you bet on the wrong technology. So as I mentioned before, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So worst case you did is you learn something, and then you just incorporate that and move on to the next technology. And I think the important part is, not to forget that you're in the business of helping people solving their problems, and you need to identify what their problems are that they are willing to throw money at it to go away. And so each pivot that you would do would be driven by solving someone's problem. And hopefully it's a bigger problem. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity usually. So, and of course, when you build a business, a lot of it relies on the team that you build around you, right? So there you make also, sometimes you make mistakes, but you need to be able to rectify the mistakes quickly and make sure you don't throw, and make sure that you always also are willing to say, like, okay, I made a mistake, we need to rectify it, this is the consequence, this we need to change. Don't let like the ego or pride get over you and kind of cost you more than actually you should. So this is something like important as well.
Yeah. Definitely, I do see. So for example, let's say today I already figure out the problem that I want to solve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I more or less know what are the key features that I need to have for the product that I'm going to launch. So this is my first venture, for example, right?
Yeah.
But for first venture, usually one of the key thing, most founders or most entrepreneurs will be very much, curious, or, they are very uncertain about is, I'm seeing a lot of people are venturing out of Singapore because we are right now in Singapore. But of course, there's still a portion of it, staying in Singapore and incorporating their company, starting their business venture here, because they do see that there are more supports coming from the government side. The ecosystem is much more driven. But for a young entrepreneur, for the first venture, how should he basically, determine, should he venture overseas? If yes, which market should he start looking in, or should he just be safe, start in Singapore and then take a look? So what would be some of the advice, right, for
Yeah.
market venture in terms of the region, right, that will better serve the industry or the crowd that they were actually seeking out for based on the product that they have?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's very easy to maybe misunderstand the new market, right? So
Yes.
if you're not lived in a certain place for a certain amount of time, you might even, not even be able to negotiate because they have different style of negotiation or different style of communication even than other countries. So the home turf is usually a good place to start, because you can then build on top of what you already know, what you're already familiar with. And I also feel like if you're in your home market, people are maybe easier to connect to you than if you're in a foreign market where people might be a little bit more reluctant to embrace you as much as a local person. If it's just normal, the way that people make decisions and build trust, and every transaction is built on trust. The trust tends to be higher if you can identify yourself with whoever is opposite you more, right? So
Right.
this is one of ours guys. So even if you join, even if you follow the same football club, or if you drive the same car or something, there's always like this thing like, oh yeah, this is one of me, and therefore that's easier to connect to, and therefore easier to build trust, and therefore easier to do business. But then having said that, if you have people who understand, let's say, other markets as well, and you can actually explore going in other places. But it really depends on the service or the product that you're offering. I think you should consider that the home turf is probably the easiest to understand and to leverage. But if you say like there's a massive problem in another market, you might actually weigh that against a problem to solve that you can solve. You should weigh that against the factor that it's not as easy to do business in other places. Sometimes you go to foreign places, there's also restrictions in terms of, because many countries, they try to protect their own people, rightly so, right? So they go like, oh, if you want to set up a business in Thailand, for example, but you're not a Thai person, then you need to have a Thai person on the board, or you need to have a certain shareholding, and that there are certain restrictions around that also need to be taken into consideration. So of course, many of the countries, they want to push their people to set up companies in their own country because they invested already in a lot in their education. So one of the kind of worst case scenarios, country spends a lot of money on their people and the people will disappear, right? So that would be like not very good value. So that's why they try to kind of retain people as well, and then you can leverage, as you mentioned before, these benefits, of course. Yeah, so that's what I recommend. But if you must go somewhere else or think like it's worth going somewhere else, do like a cost benefit analysis. What's the legal implications? What's the financial implications? Even travel can, travel back and forth, or you might relocate, but then you might have visa restrictions. The country might ask you to invest a certain amount of money in that country, so you can get a visa for setting up overseas and things like that. So yeah, there's no kind of blanket answer to this question, but I think this is one of these situations where you have to make decisions, and you might regret it. You might find out that it doesn't work, and then you have to actually just take the consequences. But actually, one I think important thing is try to find out a way beforehand to experiment if you feel like going abroad, for example, will be very beneficial or not. And one way of doing that is doing research of other companies that do similar things, for example, or other companies that even have done the same thing before. Or you can just do surveys as well, like, ask people and see, for example, does this and this and this work? But do some market research, work with this, and consulting companies that help you with that, and they might give you an assessment in advance. But I think the key is, to carefully think about it, but always keep a plan B. And so in case that this doesn't work and you don't fall over totally. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, because I think this is I think one of the most common question that most of the founders or entrepreneurs will face, right? Like which market serves the best, right? In early stages, most of them will face this problem because they don't know which one actually, feel that is the most painful, right, for them, and they are willing to pay, right? And if they're willing to pay, at what rate? Because sometimes software solution can be a bit price sensitive, right? Each of the industry have their own preference in terms of the budgets, right, the pay range. So this is why I think it's a common question, but I agree with you. There's no right or wrong. There's no one answer that can answer, right, all the questions or all the doubts that everyone could possibly have. It definitely takes a lot of trial and error, right? Understanding your own market, talk to any local representative. It could be your colleagues, your friends who are basically stationed there locally. Find out from them, do they see a fit, right? The best is after seeing there's a good product market fit, they can also recommend you some connections, right? I think that was the best way to test out with the local market. Yeah, definitely. I mean, here we comes to the rapid fire sessions. Just one quick question. If you have a supernatural power, right, today at this moment to go back into time or forward into time, what would you choose and why?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends if I can take my knowledge with me, right? If I can take my knowledge with me, I would go into the past. If I cannot take my knowledge with me, I'd probably go into the future to see, what's there, and maybe I can go back again. So to answer your question is, it's I think knowledge is power, right? And if you have knowledge that other people don't have, you can actually, I mean, we can always take knowledge into the future, of course. That's what we do every day. But if you can take it to the past, that would be something exciting. But I'm very excited about the future, and I think people should be embracing all these new technologies that are coming out like in spades at the moment, and they're giving so many opportunities. There's going to be a lot of paradigm shifts in the future, and I think the key is to understand how this paradigm shift, can change the way that people work with each other, live, and do their everyday actions and activities. And if you can understand or have a vision from that, how the world is going to change, you might foresee even there's going to be this massive problem in the future. So you might actually start thinking already now, oh, how can I address this problem now? There you go. You have potentially a business opportunity.
Definitely. I mean, looking into the future is also something that I'm really excited about. I mean, at least going into the future, I will want to travel back into the current moment, right? Am I successful enough, 5 years later? What am I doing? Is the technology being shaped in a way that, we are actually looking at it wrong, or at least we are actually forecasting it to be? I think that'll be something interesting. But I do agree that knowledge is the most important thing, right? Because knowledge is something that, no one can take away from you, right? If it's owned by you, it is something that belongs to you because it's all your hard work, all the time that you actually spend to grow your own knowledge, right? So
Definitely.
just one question, one hot burning question. I believe everyone would be very interested to learn more from you based on your own definitions, right? How would you define a successful company from your perspective?
Okay. So from my perspective, I mean, for me, what is very important is that I enjoy what I'm doing, right? It's not always the same for everyone. For some people, it's more important to make a lot of money. For other people, it's more important to change the world. For other people, so everybody needs to find what's important for them when they do a business. Typically, there's two types of businesses. One is a growth business where it's all about growth and creating growth and investing and growing it. And the other one is more like it's called like a lifestyle business, where you basically have a comfortable income. You're not intending to grow the company, but you're intending to keep it running and to keep good lifestyle from it. So as the name says, the one is more focused on having a nice lifestyle, whereas the growth one can be very stressful and it can implode, and but both can implode. But I think when you decide what kind of business you want to do, you have to make a decision. Do I want to be in a growth business, which is kind of it's all about growth, or do I want to be in a lifestyle business where it's more about having comfortable income, but just going with the flow more or less, so to speak. I've been in both, but I think for me the important part is that I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, and then I'm happy, enjoying the everyday challenges that we have and that we tackle. So I always make decisions in that direction.
Definitely. I do agree. I think the best thing about running a successful company is always, knowing that you're waking up feeling happy the next morning. I think that's
Absolutely.
more and more important, right? I think
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Christoph,
My
right,
pleasure.
for having you with us in this podcast. So as we conclude, right, keep in mind that every entrepreneur started with the idea and determinations. So take the very first step, pursue your passion, inspire others along the way. So thank you for joining us on Taxonomy. Until next episode, stay inspired, keep pushing boundaries. Ciao.